Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of The Great Ruler Season 2 Part 3 based on novel. So let's start. When the white dragon spiritual pearl appeared in Mu Chen's hand, his palm suddenly clenched. As a faint white light was released, the deep roars of dragons seemed to have come along with it. Boom! The white dragon spiritual pearl in his palm trembled as it resonated. The boundless spiritual energy was like a tidal wave as it flowed from Mu Chen's palm into his body. The spiritual energy was pure and powerful, and the roars of dragons seemed to be following it. It was vast and mighty as it filled Mu Chen's body to the point that he found it a little painful. The power of the white dragon spiritual pearl was way too majestic. Mu Chen deeply inhaled a mouthful of air and didn't dare to lose the slightest bit of concentration. His state of mind was submerged in the heart array state. As he borrowed the control ability granted by the state, the spiritual seals were being formed by both of his hands. As his hand signs changed, everyone could see that a dazzling light was constantly fluctuating from within Mu Chen's body. Under the ripples of the light halo, the spiritual seals were being formed at an frightening speed, one after another, from Mu Chen's hands. He's beginning to form spiritual seals. Someone exclaimed as their line of sight focused onto Mu Chen's body. Su Xian, Su Linga, and their group were also nervously directing their gazes at him. Forming spiritual seals wasn't difficult. However, forming spiritual seals that could control 10 rank 3 spiritual arrays was the problem. Under everyone's gaze, the light around Mu Chen became denser as the amount of spiritual seals formed by him continued to drastically increase. In just a few short minutes, the amount of spiritual seals around Mu Chen had already amounted to over 100 and was still increasing. The shocking amount of spiritual seals made quite a few people's eyelids twitch. Trying to form over 100 spiritual seals would require someone to at least be a rank 4 spiritual array master. Members of the Demon's Gate in the plaza became uneasy as smears of restlessness flashed across their eyes. Right now, they finally sensed danger. Yao's eyes were still dark, but the hand that he had on the armrest slowly started to tighten. Small amounts of cracks were spreading along the armrest. His instincts told him that it's best to obstruct Mu Chen right then. But the current situation forced him to be seated there, since he already gave the initiative over to Mu Chen earlier. If he disturbed Mu Chen, then it would show everyone there that, right now, there was fear in his heart. If that's the case, then that was clearly something that Yao could not tolerate. I'll see to what extent can you reach? His eyes were ice cold as he locked onto Mu Chen's figure. There wasn't any expressions on his face, which made everyone else unable to speak a word. On one side, Yang Hong was also uneasily staring at Mu Chen with fear, jealousy and hatred flashing across his eyes. He could sense Yao's changes and, clearly, even the latter felt unease. He tightly clenched his fist as he grounded his teeth. He refused to believe that Mu Chen could be so powerful to such an extent. Under all of the uneasy gazes in the plaza, Mu Chen's body looked as though he had concealed himself under a dazzling light. The 100+ spiritual seals, at this moment, had also seemed to have increased in quantity. Except, because of the dazzling light covering him, they are unable to clearly see how many spiritual seals were formed by Mu Chen. At this moment, everyone raised their heads with hope. The powerful light gradually started to weaken after a long time, and as the light gradually weakened, Mu Chen's figure had, once again, appeared before everyone's line of sight. Everyone's gaze was switched over in that instant as the irregular sound of someone breathing resounded. The spiritual seals were densely packed around Mu Chen. That amount seemed to have surpassed 500, and under that frightening amount, the people felt dizziness from the astonishment that they'd received. How is that possible? Someone cried out with overwhelming shock. They couldn't imagine that someone at the heavenly fusion stage middle phase could form so many spiritual seals. Furthermore, even if he could form so many spiritual seals, can he really control them? The arrangement of the spiritual arrays was extremely harsh, and the slightest disorder would cause the spiritual arrays to collapse. On a roof, Xu Qingqing was dumbfounded as she watched the scene before her. Not a single ridicule came out of her mouth. No matter how stupid she was, she could understand how frightening 500 spiritual seals represented. 500 spiritual seals. Before her, Zhu Huang also deeply exhaled a breath. His usual calmness was replaced with disbelief as he muttered, how could he control so many? Mu Chen is formidable. Su Ling's eyes widened as she exclaimed in admiration. Beside her, Li Qing and Guo Xiong exchanged a look and they noticed the shock from the other's eyes. Since their mission from before, they already knew that Mu Chen wasn't normal. Although this handsome youth appeared calm and undisturbed, he seemed to have possessed an endless amount of cards under his sleeves. Even though his age wasn't that old, he would give other people a feeling of deep and unmeasurable potential. Originally, everyone thought that Mu Chen would fight straightforwardly with He Yao. But no one expected him to secretly arrange so many spiritual arrays in the Demon Gate headquarters. Furthermore, what's more frightening was that he could actually activate all those spiritual arrays at once. You guys have forgotten the fact that he is a spiritual array master. Perhaps, he had already reached the heights of a rank for spiritual array master. Su Xian also said softly, if I've not guessed incorrectly, Mu Chen should have comprehended the heart array state and it's probably not in the initial phase. Mu Chen truly was a spiritual array master. However, the reason why he could control such a frightening amount of spiritual seals was only due to the fact that he had comprehended the heart array state. Furthermore, his attainments on it wasn't low. With his ability as a rank 4 spiritual array master, the powerful heart array state that he possessed, and adding the fact that he already made preparations long ago, it wasn't impossible for him to control 10 rank 3 spiritual arrays after borrowing some external force. While everyone was shocked at the frightening amount of spiritual seals, Mu Chen's slender fingers lightly tapped them as they dragged a huge wind along with them. All of the spiritual seals flew out as they whistled, thereafter, they separated. Under everyone's fearful gazes, the spiritual seals shot into the 10 huge lumps of light that surrounded the Demon's Gate. As the spiritual seals entered them, everyone saw that the 10 lumps of light were expanding at astonishing speeds. Complicated strings of spiritual energy intersected with one another and, thereafter, they gradually formed into 10 huge massive spiritual arrays. Great Flame Demon Spiritual Array, activate. Mu Chen's indifferent voice resounded within the region and everyone could see the huge spiritual array bursting forth with scarlet light. Violent and blazing ripples swept out thereafter. Wind Demon Spiritual Array, another rank 3 spiritual array was successfully activated as the hurricane sounded like blades whistling in the air. Mountain Ceiling Demonic Spiritual Array. Roaring Gold Tiger Spiritual Array. The name of each spiritual array was solemnly spoken out from Mu Chen's mouth, one after another. Following his voice, a rank 3 spiritual array was successfully activated. In just a few dozen short breaths, the 10 spiritual arrays in the sky were all activated as the light spread out from them. The spiritual aura between the heavens and earth also became violent at this moment. Everyone's expressions were brilliant as they looked at those 10 spiritual arrays and deeply exhaled as their hearts became filled with astonishment. No one could have imagined that Mu Chen was really capable of activating those 10 rank 3 spiritual arrays. That fellow was truly monstrous. Big Brother Mu Chen's frightening. The members of the Goddess Luo Association were blankly staring at the scene up in the sky. Even Yi Qingling, Zhu Ling, and the rest had dumbfounded expressions written on their faces. Clearly, they also never expected Mu Chen to create such a scene. So, the reason why he went missing was to prepare all of these. They exchanged glances. From the looks of it, once this fellow was enraged, he was indeed horrifying. Luo Li also raised her exquisite face as she quietly watched the weightless figure that was seated on the pavilion. The corner of her mouth rose into a soft smile. In the plaza, it was absolutely silent. Those from the Demon's Gate, who were laughing and did not care earlier on, had already lost the ability to laugh. Their faces were turning green as they looked at the 10 huge spiritual arrays that surrounded their headquarters. The frightening spiritual energy ripples made their feet go soft. Obviously, the current them could not laugh anymore. How could they have expected that the freshman named Mu Chen would actually create such a large-scale scene and completely surrounded their headquarters with spiritual arrays? Boss, what should we do? Chen, whose lips trembled and his voice was a little hoarse. Being surrounded by 10 rank 3 spiritual arrays would cause even them to feel fear. If those 10 spiritual arrays were aimed towards them, they felt that there wouldn't be any way for them to survive. The core members of the Demon's Gate that were on standby also had their faces turned stiff. If it wasn't for He Yao being there, they would have lost their wills long ago. He Yao's expression was dark as his palm abruptly increased in strength and the armrest of the chair instantly exploded. As they remained silent, Mu Chen, who was seated on the towering pavilion, slowly opened his eyes. A smear of redness flashed across his face, but his black pupils were indifferently staring at those from the Demon's Gate. "Senior brother He Yao," Mu Chen indifferently called out in this quiet region. Everyone focused their gazes as the calm voice of this youth seemed to have possessed an indescribable pressure at that moment. The pressure was spreading from him and made it so that no one dared to belittle him. "I wonder, does the current me possess the qualifications to pay a visit and seek some guidance from you? I wonder, does the current me possess the qualifications to pay a visit and seek some guidance from you?" When the youth spoke with an indifferent voice that was spreading throughout this region, everyone felt as though the air had stopped moving. The youth appeared to be skinny, but he possessed an indescribable pressure. That was the power formed from the surrounding 10 rank 3 spiritual arrays and, right now, there wasn't anyone that would laugh at his so-called visit. In the plaza, the members of the Demon's Gate were speechless as the ridicule on their faces vanished. They exchanged looks and their expressions were filled with horror. "Boss!" Chen Hu and the rest directed their gazes towards He Yao, who had no expression on his face. Under the countless gazes, He Yao also slowly placed his hand down on the armrest. Except, the armrest had already been turned into dust as it fell. He lightly tapped the dust and as he raised his head, there was a frightening cold gathering in his eyes. "Mu Chen, I have to say, you have indeed made me feel unexpected." Mu Chen smiled noncommittally as he stared at He Yao. "If you've done something wrong, then there's a price that you have to pay, right? Did you really think that these 10 rank 3 spiritual arrays would make me feel helpless?" He Yao's voice sounded as though it was turning colder with each word. If the 10 rank 3 spiritual arrays were to be activated at the same time, even a heavenly transformation stage initial phase expert would be instantly killed. However, if He Yao only had that much ability, then he wouldn't be able to sit firmly at the rank 4 of the heavenly ranking. Everyone looked at the two who opposed one another and inwardly smacked their lips. This confrontation seemed to be even more fierce compared to Mu Chen and Li Xuantong's pact of 3 moves. "These spiritual arrays have wasted quite a bit of time for you, right? It seems like I've belittled you. I never thought that you would actually hide yourself within our Demon's Gate headquarters during these last few days." He Yao gradually stood up. There wasn't any emotion rippling within his voice. "But after you've used up these spiritual arrays, what other methods do you have up your sleeves?" His eyes were dark as he stared at Mu Chen. The current card that Mu Chen possessed was clearly the 10 rank 3 spiritual arrays. Facing those rank 3 spiritual arrays, not to mention a heavenly transformation stage initial phase, even those of the middle phase would hide from its cutting blade. However, just because someone else was unable to withstand it, that doesn't mean that He Yao won't be able to. He Yao straightened his body as a frightening spiritual energy rippled like a tidal wave that was sweeping out from his body. The slab beneath his feet quietly shattered as a crack rapidly extended out. Everyone was instantly shocked as they watched his actions. Was He Yao going to take action and withstand those 10 rank 3 spiritual arrays? "Chen Hu, after I've withstood those 10 rank 3 spiritual arrays, you'll lead a group of people and act. Since the other party is acting so atrociously in Demon's Gate headquarters, there's no need to be polite to them." He Yao slowly stepped forth as he spoke with indifference. "Yes." Chen Hu and the rest instantly agreed. Shortly after, they ferociously directed their gazes towards those of the Goddess Luo Association. If the threat of those rank 3 spiritual arrays were removed, then there's nothing to fear from those freshmen. Although Luo Li was also formidable, it was, after all, impossible for her to deal with so many of them at one time. After giving these freshmen a rough beating, they believe that the freshmen will no longer have the guts to stay there. When Yi Qingling and the rest saw the ferocious lights in the eyes of Chen Hu and those of the Demon's Gate, their faces slightly changed. However, there wasn't any intention to cower back from them. A cold light flickered in Luo Li's eyes. Shortly after, she extended her slender jade-like hands out and lightly held onto the hilt of her long sword. Vaguely, a sharp sword aura gathered around her. The atmosphere turned hostile in that instant as multiple gazes fixed onto He Yao, who was slowly moving forth. As the atmosphere froze, Mu Chen's face still didn't show any ripples as he looked at the approaching He Yao. Shortly thereafter, he smiled, "Senior brother He Yao, these 10 rank 3 spiritual arrays weren't prepared for you." He Yao's steps paused as he looked at Mu Chen. He wore a cold smile on his face. "Oh? Could the current you still have any ability to do something else?" He Yao wasn't some normal person, after all. Although they didn't know what methods Mu Chen used to arrange the 10 rank 3 spiritual arrays, he could see that Mu Chen was already at his limit. It's not possible for the latter to separate his attention elsewhere to do anything else. Not only could he see that, even Su Xian, Xu Huang and the rest had the same feeling as they lightly nodded their heads at that moment. It was already formidable that the current Mu Chen could reach to such an extent. It was basically impossible for the latter to still be able to separate his attention to do anything else. Mu Chen did not bother with those numerous doubting gazes, but only replied with a smile, "Senior brother He Yao, these spiritual arrays are prepared for those people that came to my goddess Luo association. Therefore, I feel that you should let them to be the ones to take these spiritual arrays." As he spoke, his blade-like cold gaze fell on Chen Hu, Yang Hong, and the rest. When they saw his gaze, all of them trembled a little. "Wait until I take your spiritual arrays, they'll naturally be the ones to test your ability." He Yao coldly smiled. He did not pay any attention to Mu Chen as he stomped on the ground and shot up. Majestic spiritual energy spread out as he flew towards Mu Chen. "Since that's the case, I can only use something else to entertain senior brother He Yao." Mu Chen indifferently smiled. Shortly after, he clenched his hand as a light flickered. A metallic rust-stained ball appeared in his hand. When the golden metallic ball appeared, Mu Chen instantly poured some spiritual energy into it. The metallic ball instantly burst forth with tens of thousands of golden lights. Thereafter, as the light swept out, extremely frightening spiritual energy ripples started to spread out. As the spiritual energy rippled, everyone could see an extremely huge spiritual array rapidly forming in the sky. That spiritual array was extremely huge, greatly surpassing those rank 3 spiritual arrays. As the complicated spiritual energy lights intersected, they formed into a cryptic and profound spiritual array. A hurricane was formed between the heavens and earth from the ripples of spiritual energy. A complicated light spiritual array that was toughly 1,000 feet in diameter appeared and floated above Mu Chen's head. It was extremely dreadful. Everyone had shock on their faces as they looked at the spiritual array above Mu Chen's head that had instantly appeared. Everyone could tell that the spiritual array before them had far surpassed the boundaries of the rank 3 spiritual arrays. From the looks of the ripples, even among rank 4 spiritual arrays, this spiritual array before them wasn't simple. How is that possible? Shortly after, they were at a loss for words. They refused to believe that Mu Chen could arrange a rank 4 spiritual array at such a rapid speed on top of those 10. From Mu Chen's earlier actions, this rank 4 spiritual array was clearly not engraved beforehand, but was instantly arranged and activated at that moment. It's the spiritual array seed. Su Xian's charming eyes flickered as she spoke in soft voice that was filled with astonishment. "It's the spiritual array seed from the auction back at White Dragon City." Mu Chen actually managed to thoroughly study it. On one side, the face of Su Linga and the rest was also filled with shock. They naturally knew about the spiritual array seed. Furthermore, it was a gift that Su Linga bidded for Mu Chen. Back then, from its rusty appearance, they thought that it had already lost its effect. However, they never imagined in their wildest imaginations that it could display so much power in the hands of Mu Chen. No wonder he wasn't afraid of He Yao, so he had this hidden card. Su Linga said with joy. The spiritual array that was hidden within the spiritual array seed wasn't weak. Facing a spiritual array of such a level, even He Yao would be afraid. Now, how will He Yao be so arrogant before Mu Chen? Mu Chen won't do anything that he doesn't have confidence in. Since he actually dared to visit the Demon's Gate, how would he not have any methods to deal with He Yao? Su Xian lightly smiled as her gaze watched the figure of that youth with a peculiar look. The countless gazes from the surrounding area froze at the sight of the spiritual array that suddenly appeared. Even He Yao, who was about to charge towards Mu Chen, abruptly stopped moving as his face flickered with doubt. From the huge spiritual array, he could sense a strong amount of danger. This made them understand that he didn't have the confidence to take it. What formidable means? He Yao's gaze flickered with a cold light as he stared at Mu Chen, along with a smear of darkness as he said with his teeth tightly clenched. "Senior brother He Yao, you're flattering me." Mu Chen faintly smiled. "Now, I'll have to trouble you to keep silent. Otherwise, I won't mind activating this spiritual array seed. But if I were to activate it, then I won't be able to stop it. At that time, I won't take any responsible for any consequences. You dare to threaten me?" He Yao's hands were tightly clenched as his tone turned cold. "Senior brother He Yao, if that's what you think, then I have no other opinion." Mu Chen's hand tightly held onto the rust-filled spiritual array seed. He Yao fixedly stared at Mu Chen as the veins in his hand twitched. However, he still did not take any action in the end. If Mu Chen only had those 10 rank 3 spiritual arrays, then he wouldn't have anything to fear. But if there's an additional rank 4 spiritual array, then even he wouldn't entirely be the same. Not even he had the confidence to withstand that. 10 rank 3 spiritual arrays, you think that it's sufficient to deal with my demon's gate? He Yao clenched his teeth. As long as he stood there, Mu Chen wouldn't dare to activate the rank 4 spiritual array. Aside from him, there were also 3 heavenly transformation stage initial phase experts. Add the fact that they possess so many people, they can't be belittled if they combine their strength. It seems that senior brother He Yao still refuses to agree to my request from before. Mu Chen stared at He Yao as he spoke. "If you want my demon's gate to apologize to freshmen like you, I'm afraid that you guys don't possess that capability." He Yao coldly laughed. "If they were to apologize, then what face do they, the demon's gate, have? Since that's the case." Mu Chen faintly smiled. Except that his smile suddenly turned cold as his hand signs suddenly changed. The surrounding 10 rank 3 spiritual arrays instantly burst forth with dazzling lights and violent spiritual energy ripples swept out. Everyone felt their hearts trembling. This Mu Chen had really managed to activate the 10 rank 3 spiritual arrays. Then I'll have to ask those of the Demon's Gate to take the spiritual arrays. Boom! When Mu Chen finished his last word, violent spiritual energy instantly started to wreak havoc. Boom! The violent energy was like a tidal wave as it spread throughout the region. 10 huge rank 3 spiritual arrays were completely activated. Looking from afar, those spiritual arrays looked like 10 blazing suns shrouding the headquarters of the Demon's Gate. Chen Hu and the rest's faces turned green at the sight of this. If it was just a rank 3 spiritual array, then naturally, there's nothing to fear. However, there were 10 right before them. Furthermore, the combined power wasn't as simple as 1 plus 1. However, at this point in time, there wasn't any paths of retreat for them. Looking at He Yao's solemn face, he clearly wasn't willing to admit defeat. Therefore, they had to join hands and withstand the 10 rank 3 spiritual arrays. If they are able to withstand them, then Mu Chen would lose his trump card. At that time, they'll be able to stage a comeback. Everyone gather together. We'll all attack at once. I don't believe that we won't be able to handle these 10 rank 3 spiritual arrays. Chen Hu gritted his teeth and barked. When the other members of the Demon's Gate heard his order, they rapidly gathered around. If they were separated right now, they'd probably suffer the consequences. Yang Hong also clenched his teeth as he stared at the skinny figure that was seated on a pavilion with hatred and fear. He never imagined that in just several months, the latter's strength would actually be so shocking to such a degree. On the pavilion, Mu Chen's eyes were indifferent as he watched those spiritual arrays soar into the sky from the plaza. Shortly after, his hand signs changed and the 10 rank 3 spiritual arrays up in the sky abruptly changed. The violent spiritual energy rapidly gathered together. Asterisk boom, asterisk. Asterisk boom, asterisk. The spiritual energy gathered and, in the next instant, 10 light pillars tore through the sky and burst out with a shocking demeanor and shot towards the demon's gate without any restraint. Let's go together. The faces of Chen Hu and the rest drastically changed as they watched the 10 huge light pillars shoot towards their direction. With a bark, the spiritual energy within their bodies also burst out and formed a spiritual energy screen up into the sky. The rest of the demon's gate also quickly circulated their spiritual energies. Different colors of spiritual energy continued to spread out and, one after another, magnificent light screens appeared. The scene was extremely spectacular. Up in the sky above the plaza, countless gazes were nervously directed towards the magnificent plaza. They wondered which side would be even more fierce in the clash of power. Under everyone's nervous gaze, 10 light beams continued to charge down. Up on the pavilion, Mu Chen's gaze was icy cold and his palms suddenly clenched. Suddenly, the 10 light beams spiraled together under everyone's astonished gaze. As they madly spiraled, they turned into a single spiraling light beam. Creak! As the huge spiraling light beam streaked across, even the air issued fragile noises. What fine control! Someone cried out. Who would have expected that not only could Mu Chen control 10 rank 3 spiritual arrays, he could even make them to merge together. Since that's the case, they'd be even more fierce and fearsome. As this train of thought flashed across their hearts, it was like 10 enraged dragons were shooting down and heavily clashed against the spiritual energy light screens. Bang! Bang! The instant they came in contact, everyone could hear each light screen shatter in an instant, one after another. The 10 spiraling light beams swept past the defenses like a hot knife through butter. On the plaza, huge cracks appeared from the spiritual energy. Multiple figures flew out, one after another, vomiting blood and were in terrible states. When Chen Hu and the rest that were at the rear saw how fierce those 10 light pillars were, their facial expressions underwent a huge change. Boom! The 10 spiritual energy light pillars that swept over had, once again, charged towards the spiritual energy light screens that they formed before them. Suddenly, the light screens violently trembled as ripples rapidly spread out. We can't withstand them, beside Chen, who was a person that had also reached heavenly transformation stage initial phase in his cultivation. That person's face was flushed red as he barked. Withdraw! A smear of fear also flashed across Chen Hu's eyes as the 10 light beams combined into one. The impact caused by them was extremely frightening. Although they had combined their strength into one, it was still impossible for them to truly merge their power together. Therefore, it was impossible for them to withstand the fearsome impact. When the remaining members of the Demon's Gate heard Chen Hu's bark, they could only grit their teeth and immediately retreated at the same time. Bang! As they retreated, the spiritual energy light screens instantly shattered. The huge light beams were like enraged dragons as they roared and shot past them from the middle of the formation. Everyone that was affected by the impact flew out in an extremely terrible state as they spewed fresh blood. As the light beams whistled past, the earth cracked. Thereafter, they charged past the plaza and heavily clashed against the Demon's Gate headquarters. Even the earth violently trembled. The Demon's Gate headquarters was smashed into pieces from the impact as the huge pavilion was instantly turned into ruins. After the light beams charged on without restraints for a period of time, the energy was gradually exhausted as it dulled down, bit by bit, and, ultimately, dispersed. Smoke continued to spread throughout the entire plaza and it was in complete disorder. Everyone's gaze looked at the scene before them with astonishment. In the vast plaza, there was roughly a huge and deep ravine that was roughly a dozen feet deep. The ravine swept past and went through the plaza, destroying the Demon's Gate headquarters. On the plaza, there were many members of the Demon's Gate howling in grief. Only Chen Hu and a small minority with some powerful strength could stand on their feet. However, their faces were filled with fear. Clearly, the frightening attack of the 10 combined spiritual arrays made them feel fear. Those 10 spiritual arrays were extremely powerful. Everyone looked at the slightly shocked and completely disordered members of the Demon's Gate. The power of those spiritual arrays was clearly powerful. If they were to fight normally, it would definitely not be so easy to defeat so many opponents at once. After the frightening power was unleashed by the 10 spiritual arrays, which caused even the sky gradually turn dull, it dispersed completely. As the spiritual arrays dispersed, the pressure that enveloped the area also disappeared. Chen Hu and the rest who still had some fighting strength left directed their ferocious glares towards Mu Chen. Mu Chen, however, ignored their gazes and directed his towards He Yao instead. Along with the Demon's Gate headquarters being destroyed, the latter's face was also especially dark. You actually dared to wreck my Demon's Gate headquarters. He Yao's body was trembling. Clearly, he was enraged. He stared at Mu Chen with a vicious dark aura emitting from his eyes. Being treated like this, isn't it bad? Mu Chen lightly stared at him as his gaze became as sharp as blades. His face was also dark, but when you bullied and humiliated my Goddess Luo Association's members, did you think of the consequences? The Grand Demon's Gate actually used a wheeling fighting technique on a girl. Since you guys no longer wanted your face, then why should I leave such useless things to you guys? He Yao's gaze was dark. The reason why Chen Hu did all of that was he ordered him to. And him doing all of that was just to vent out the anger he had towards Mu Chen for not giving him any face. But who would have expected that Mu Chen would actually be so ruthless and did not spare any face for him? Boss, we'll help you capture that brat. We'll see what else can he do. Chen Hu barked. Shortly after, him and the other two Heavenly Transformation Stage initial phase experts flew out as well and went directly towards Mu Chen. Get lost. However, when they moved their bodies, Luo Li's figure appeared before them. The young girl had her jade-like hands on the hilt of her black longsword. Luo Li's pupils were ice-cold at this moment. A sharp sword aura swept out, causing cracks on the ground as she threw enraged slashes towards Chen Hu and the other two without the slightest show of mercy. You? The faces of Chen Hu and the other two drastically changed. They tasted how formidable Luo Li was, so, naturally, they wouldn't be slow. The three of them acted together as their three spiritual energies clashed against the sword aura. Bang! The earth cracked and the bodies of Chen Hu and the other two trembled. They were sent flying back. You dare! He Yao's gaze was cold as spiritual energy swept out from his body and he was about to take action against Luo Li. Same goes for you. Mu Chen also issued a cold bark as he tightened his grip on the spiritual array seed. The huge spiritual array that was above him slowly revolved. Sensing the huge spiritual array emitting violent spiritual energy ripples, He Yao's eyes turned even darker as he fixed his eyes on Mu Chen. Did you really think that you can deal with me by just relying on this spiritual array? Then come and try it. Mu Chen didn't yield in the slightest as he coldly stared at He Yao. Okay, then today, I'll see how formidable you are. He Yao laughed with anger as he took a step forth. Spiritual energy rolled like huge waves. However, just when He Yao was about to act, a figure flashed over and stood before Mu Chen. That figure gently smiled. He Yao, this issue was created by your side. Why are you being so overbearing? Su Xian. When He Yao saw the girl that appeared before Mu Chen, his eyes instantly turned dark. You're trying to help him. I just don't wish to see the both of you fight and cause such unpleasantness. Su Xian lightly smiled. The corner of He Yao's eyes twitched from Su Xian's words. They'd already gone this far, and what was this unpleasantness that she spoke of? Su Xian was good with her words, but, clearly, she was siding with Mu Chen. What if I refuse? He Yao said with his eyes darkening. Mu Chen has saved the life of us, the two sisters, at least. Therefore, I can't stand by and watch as he's being bullied, so I'll have to apologize. Su Xian said lightly. However, her words were clear that if He Yao wanted to touch Mu Chen, then she would definitely act as well. He Yao's gaze was dark as it became filled with an enraged blaze. Both of his fists were tightly clenched. This was the first time that he saw Su Xian stand out to protect a guy. This made him feel jealousy in his heart and he was nearly set aflame by the jealousy. He Yao's palms were tightly clenched to the point that creaking sounds came from his fists. However, he chose not to act in the end, as it's still not the time for him to show his cards. He deeply inhaled a mouthful of air as the rage within his eyes slowly dulled down. However, He directed his vicious eyes towards Mu Chen and said coldly, "Mu Chen, don't think that you won this time. I still have not treated you as a genuine opponent. But rest assured, in the hunting war, I will set you as my prey. At that time, you'll pay back everything that you've done today." At that time, his dark eyes were, once again, directed towards Su Xian. "No one will be able to save you." When Mu Chen heard his words, he lightly smiled. He slightly tightened his grip and the spiritual array seed settled down and was restored its original rusty state. Thereafter, he stored it. "Senior brother He Yao, no matter what you're intending to do." He stood up on the pavilion and looked at He Yao. Thereafter, he waved his hand towards Luo Li and the rest who were below and turned around. There wasn't that many ripples in his voice, but it resounded throughout the plaza. "I, Mu Chen, will always accept your challenge. This video will end here.